Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to episode 153 of the Story Stream. My name is Mr. Gerald, and we are here together to write a story. We are going to continue the story we started 2 episodes ago, the story of Rocket the Stone Giant. Before we do, however, I found this the other day when I was cleaning up. It is a book, 1001 Riddles for Children, and I thought we might take a look at it before we start today. This parrot seems to find them very funny. Before that, how are you? I rushed into that today. How are you today? I hope wherever you are, you're doing well. Episode 153, we are in the home stretch. If you haven't tuned in lately, you might not know that I am ending this series on episode 160, which is a mere 7 episodes away. And I will miss doing this, and I will probably do something similar in some form or another. It did make me think, of all the many stories we've written and the random words we pull. Our words for our current story are rocket, boulder, farm, and smooth. We have had 3 of those words before. We had rocket way back in episode 29, the story of Marcus and Josiah and the rocket they shot through their neighbor's home. We had boulder 3 times before, amazingly, and that's not even our most popular word. Boulder came up in the story about Gomer Goblin, who baked a cake for his grandma. In the story of Oli the bear, the mountain-bound forager who had to share his cabin with a pack of rabbits. And also a Food City story, the one of Katerina Cake and Boris P., episode 138. We've never had farm, although we had 4 stories take place on farms. And smooth came up way back in episode 74, the story of Emily and her mother's cake. That was one of my all-time favorites. So let's get to that riddle, shall we? Something to brighten up our day. 1001 riddles. Let's pick a number. 153, how about? Actually, let's find out what year this was published. 1001 Riddles for Children, compiled and illustrated by George L. Carlson in New York by the Platt and Monk Company, Incorporated. And look at that bookplate. I like that. Copyright MCM XLIX 1949. 1949. All right, Riddle number 153 to go with our episode today. What asks no questions but requires many answers? What asks no questions but require many answers? You know what? Let's save that answer for later in the episode. You can think on it while we get reacquainted with our story, which begins here. As I said, our prompt words were rocket, boulder, farm, and smooth. We did some sketches, and we arrived here with this little rock giant and their attempts to grow boulders. And our story goes, I'm going to zoom out just slightly. In a far-off land lived giants made of stone. They walked through forests, they talked to birds, they sat in lakes and fields of flowers, enjoying the sun. They did many things, but the most important thing they did was tend their farms. The rock giants grew boulders, big boulders, massive boulders, the biggest boulders anyone has ever seen. Then they threw them into the river, and they threw the boulders into the river, where they would be carried downstream and broken into all the rocks, the gravel, and sand in the world. There was one giant, smaller than all the others, who had never managed to grow a big boulder. Their name was Rocket, and their boulders turned out different. Rocket asked the other farmers for advice. Singing helps, said some. Plant at moonlight, said others. Turn 3 times and throw the seed over your shoulder, said others still. Rocket tried everything, but it was no use. The fields were littered with Rocket's creations. Maybe you should leave the farming to us, said the other giants as they walked through the fields, tripping on fire hydrants and chickens. Rocket walked to the lake, grumbling the whole way. They sat in the water and grumbled some more. Not fair, said Rocket. Rocket decided to go to the deepest part of the lake. It'll be easier to ignore everyone down here, they thought. And it was. The deep part of the lake was quiet and very, very dark. But then Rocket noticed a glow. It was a small, perfectly smooth gem. Rocket picked it up and carried it back to the surface. It's a seed, said Rocket. But it was unlike any seed they had ever seen. Rocket knew right away it was special. I'll plant this, decided Rocket. Whatever it grows is bound to be better than my weird creations. And so Rocket turned 3 times and threw the gem over his shoulder at the next full moon, humming a hopeful tune the whole while. Then Rocket sat on one of their boulders and waited. The morning sun showed that Rocket had grown the largest, the smoothest, the squarest boulder any giant had ever seen. Hooray, hooray, sang Rocket as they capered around their boulder. My first harvest! The other giants weren't so sure. We've never moved anything this big, they said. But they didn't have the heart not to try. They gathered around the base of Rocket's big boulder and lifted. For a moment, everything went perfectly. The careful giants took their steps in time. But then, and that's where we ended yesterday, to be continued. And then what? What do we think happens? Something I think about often here on the story stream is how these stories come to be. We take our random words, we start writing and doodling, and then before we know it, we have a story. But I think often about how the story would be different if I started for once at 3:30 instead of 4:18. If I wore a red shirt instead of a blue one. If the weather outside was rainy, or if things in the world were getting me frustrated. These stories always develop in different ways. Unpredictable ways, especially because we visit them from day to day. Which is all to say, yesterday Monday, after writing, I sort of had an idea that it felt like it was the key to the story, and I think it was in the opening line. It was, in a far-off land lived giants made of stone. I kind of like that big view. I like, literally, I like this big view of this world. And I wonder if we have to go back to that because, to be honest, I wasn't quite sure I was happy with where the story was going. Just something to think about. All right, so let's see. The giants have lifted, they have heaved Rocket's stone out of the ground, and it is, and they're walking it, and one of them is about to trip on one of Rocket's strange totems. Let's pick up there and see what happens. You know, I don't want this gigantic monolith to, I don't really want it to wreck anything, especially not the forest or other giants. All right, what would happen if this big square stone fell into the river and dammed it up? It would be a problem because the giants would have no way to continue their work of creating all the sand and gravel in the world. What would the solution be, I wonder? I wonder if that monolith was the right idea. We may want to work on that. All right, for the time being, let's, I have this left over from yesterday. Let's make a couple more pages because we're gonna need to draw this. We can think as I do this. If you can bear with me, I think maybe just 4 more pages will do it. If Rocket's creation did dam up the river, that would be a problem for the giants. But then they smash it and everything goes back to normal. I can't really think of any kind of a clever thing. If Rocket's creations were bizarrely mechanical, or if they turned out to be like plants, then, you know, they could maybe weather the giant rock and maybe this story should be about Rocket not wanting to give his art up, or their art up. Maybe Rocket, despite their creations being strange, the other giants could say, it doesn't matter how big it is, it doesn't matter how strange it looks. A rock is a rock. Throw it in the river and it will turn to gravel and sand, just like everything else. And Rocket could say, but these are my creations, I don't want to. And Rocket could hoist them out of the ground and keep them in sort of a gallery. I kind of like that idea. What do you think? How far back in the story do we have to go to change it? I think decision time. It's a big decision. I think I'm going to go for it because I can't really see anything in the other ending that excites me. Ready? Here we go. We probably have to go back around here. Yeah, maybe right around here. I'm having cold feet. I would be getting rid of a great number of pages. I feel like Rocket not wanting to get rid of their creations. All right. There was one giant, smaller than all the others, who had never managed to grow a big boulder. Their name was Rocket, and their boulders turned out different. The big giants didn't mind. A rock is a rock. They said. Throw it in the river. And it will break into gravel and sand. Just like any other. I like drawing these giants. But Rocket couldn't bear to part with any of their creations. Let's make this one look like a giant chicken. Rocket, of course, has those stripes around their belly. The big giants didn't mind. A rock is a rock, they said. Throw it into the river, and it will break into gravel and sand, just like any other. But Rocket couldn't bear to part with any of their creations. while the other giants harvested their boulders, Rocket carried his high up the mountain. Get another one of these bird's eye view I was talking about. And this rock giant is standing here looking proudly at their rock, at their big boulder. What does this statue look like? Let's see, we had fire hydrants, the thinker, peace symbol, chicken. And those strange faces. We'll just make this one of those faces, I think. Actually, it just occurred to me that this could be a bulldog, maybe. Or a pig or an elephant or anything. I'll just leave it as that for now, though. here, the air is really thin. While the other giants harvested their boulders, Rocket carried theirs high up the mountain. I was saying the other day that when I was a kid, scenes like this bothered me in picture books. Anytime a book had to be turned sideways to be read, it didn't fit with my idea of what I thought a consistent design should be. But in this case, I kind of like it. And I think I'm going to bring that in right here, because we're getting rid of that page, of course. They carried theirs high up the mountain. After several seasons, oh hey Ford, they do look like the trolls from Hilda. I should have looked at that for inspiration, because I was feeling stumped. Oh, those trolls, their heads are all over the landscape. I was feeling stumped. That would have been a great inspiration to turn to. Thanks for bringing that up. I may look that up, but I'm sort of getting somewhere right now. After several seasons, Rocket had created quite a gallery. This would actually make me dizzy. Ford, what I need help with right now is different sculptures. So these are all rock, as you saw. They're rock giants, not rock trolls, but they plant seeds and they grow boulders. But this one rock troll named Rocket doesn't quite have the knack, and whatever they plant grows into a strange stone, like either faces or a giant chicken. So I need some more random things. What else could Rocket grow? A donut, thank you, that's perfect. All right, I've got that head, a chicken, this maybe a cat. Anything else besides a donut? It's donut boulder complete with sprinkles. Hollow Knight. Well, I'll take your knight idea. Maybe a chess piece of like a horse head. Hey, can you do a research favor for me while you're there? I've forgotten the Native American name for Mount Rushmore. Can you find out what the name of that mountain is, in case I decide to make a reference here? Maybe here we can have a pig's bottom. After several seasons, Rocket had created quite a gallery. On the rocky slopes. Rocket nimble-footed as a goat. Wait, if Rocket was nimble-footed, they wouldn't skid down the slope, would they? All right, thanks for looking. I wouldn't use this as a reference anyway, but just how I was talking about it and said, hey, this looks like, I didn't want to say, it looks like Mount Rushmore. I wanted to be respectful and use the indigenous name. After several seasons, Rocket had created quite a gallery on the rocky slopes. Rocket, nimble-footed as a goat. Nah, let's take that line out. All right, any idea what's going to happen here? I wonder if there's any pages we can reuse from our other. So I abandoned a big part of the story. Let me get those pieces that dropped earlier. Hey, how about that? All right, here we go. All right, we have Rocket going down. Oh. We have Rocket in the lake here. What if there's an avalanche? But instead of Rocket's creations crumbling to dirt, what if they landed with a splash in that lake and it became like a permanent exhibit? All right, let's see how the story sounds with this edit we made to it. In a far-off land lived giants made of stone. They walked through forests. They talked to birds. They sat in lakes and in fields of flowers, enjoying the sun. They did many things, but the most important thing they did was tend their farms. The rock giants grew boulders, big boulders, massive boulders, the biggest boulders anyone has ever seen. Then they threw those boulders into the river where they would be carried downstream and broken into all the rocks, gravel, and sand in the world. There was one giant, smaller than all the others, who had never managed to grow a big boulder. Their name was Rocket, and their boulders turned out different. The big giants didn't mind. A rock is a rock, they said. Throw it in the river and it will break into gravel and sand just like any other. But Rocket couldn't bear to part with any of their creations. While the other giants harvested their boulders, Rocket carried theirs high up the mountain. After several seasons, Rocket had created quite a gallery on the rocky slopes. Rocket thought it made the cliffs look beautiful. From below, it looked a bit different. I don't like just saying different. Let's see, a boot, an iron. Let me look around my desk, see what else I have. A teacup, a tape dispenser, a pencil, a shoebox, what else? A potted cactus, a Tetris piece, a Rubik's Cube, an ink bottle, an elephant, actually I'll make that a rhino, The big giant's worried. Why is this guy hiding from Rocket? I think this person doesn't want to deliver the bad news. This rock giant has a little bush growing out the top of their head. Rocket, they said, you are one mountain goat sneezing away from an avalanche. All right, let's say hi to Shasta, who's dropped by for a visit, and let's think about what's going to happen here. Do we think a mountain goat is going to sneeze? From below, it looked different. The big giant's worried Rocket's creations were unsafe. Rocket, they said, you are one mountain goat sneezing. You are one mountain goat sneeze? You are one mountain goat sneeze. You are one mountain goat sneezing away from an avalanche. Ah, come on, says Rocket. I like that. Ah, come on. Ah, come on, said Rocket. Then they heard it. A distant... What does a mountain goat sneezing sound like? Bachu. Zoom tight, little goat. Now, I have mixed feelings about this. I mean, on one hand, maybe Rocket learns that art is fleeting. But I know what it feels like when you lose a favorite drawing or when you can't well, like when you lose a favorite drawing, it's not a good feeling. Rocket couldn't bear to turn around. All right, I actually do have an idea. So I was thinking a couple things here. One, yes, it is sad. Rocket is going to be sad. I would be sad if I lost my collection of Storystream stories. They're sitting below my desk right now in a large cardboard box. If I lost those, I'd be very depressed. But I was thinking of art and the impermanence of art and how some people embrace that. The people, the Tibetan artists who make beautiful mandalas out of colored sand. I should find a picture of that for you. I'll share that with you next episode. But these beautiful geometric designs out of colored sand, at the end of which they just sweep it away. That's part of the sweeping it away is part of the act of creating it. So maybe Rocket will have sort of an Eastern philosophy regarding this. And maybe Rocket could use the gravel from his creations. What if all these things grew out of different types of stones? There could be I don't know my stones well enough offhand, the colorful ones, but not gemstones, but just red granite, things like that. Anyway, each one could be a different color, and so when the gravel collapses, he has piles of colorful sand. I think I like that idea. Then they heard it, a distant bah-choo. Rocket couldn't bear to turn around. Right. Come on, tape. Ay, ay, ay. Come on, tape. We're in the home stretch. All right, there's one. This will be where Rocket visits the rubble. This will probably be where Rocket mopes temporarily. And then I think a final page where Rocket gets inspired. We'll start with 3 for now. So now I'm thinking, whoops, that was poorly lined up. I guess this story maybe takes place somewhere in the Himalayas. And we're at 55 minutes. I think this is turning out just right. Where were we? Then they heard it, a distant bah-choo. Rocket couldn't bear to turn around. Slowly, they made their way to the base of the mountain. No, there's some would be on the outside, of course. I've always wondered about those artists who have the patience to sit and draw every single pebble in a scene. I'm not that artist. Do you need anything? Asked the other giants kindly. Just some time. Said Rocket. Actually, I don't know if this... Yeah, I think it would be nice to include the other giants in this picture. They are a community. Rocket stayed there late into the night. They sat in the sand and gravel that had been their works. And looked at the sky. I'm picturing all the gravel sort of in these swirly patterns around Rocket. And I guess technically Rocket is laying. They laid in the gravel? They lied in the gravel. They sat in the sand and gravel that had been their works and looked at the sky. The stars swirled above them. Rock giants live a long time? I want to give an indication that Rocket knows that even stars are unchanging. I'll need to think on that line for a minute. I don't know if that's you watching for it or if it's someone else, but if you have an idea for a line there, I would be very happy to hear it. The stars swirled above them. Not even the stars are permanent, Rocket thought. A breeze blew past. And suddenly, oops. Rocket felt better. And then this will be our last picture. And how is that possible? I don't want to see that there while I'm drawing this last page, so I'm going to replace that battery. What am I doing? Yes, replacing the battery in here. 1 hour and 5 minutes of streaming. I feel like it used to have a bit more life in it. Nothing is permanent, not even camera batteries. Although I'm sure the landfills feel differently. Landfills. All right, here we go. Last page. Let's see. Rocket stayed there late into the night. They sat in the sand and gravel that had been their works and looked at the sky. The stars swirled above them. Not even those stars are permanent, Rocket thought. A breeze blew past, and suddenly Rocket felt better. I wonder if Rocket should move on to making abstract shapes here, or if... Here comes a giant coming to visit Rocket. There are a few others still harvesting their boulders. Here's one guy just laying in the grass. Some nice clouds. Guess we'll get rid of this hill. Okay, I think I will end it there. Oh, no, we need one last thing. A visit from the mountain goat who did all this. And maybe they have a little kid. All right. I don't want to write the end, but maybe some alpine flowers. And that is it for episode 153. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will do a reading of this story and then say goodbye for now. I think that's it. Are you ready? Here we go. That story put me in a very calm state of mind. It's very pleasant. All right, are you ready? Here we go. We started with the words rocket, boulder, farm, and smooth. We had the idea we would write about rock giants who farmed boulders, and in particular, this little rock giant named Rocket. And our story goes, in a far-off land lived giants made of stone. They walked through forests, they talked to birds, they sat in lakes and in fields of flowers, enjoying the sun. They did many things, But the most important thing they did was tend their farms. The rock giants grew boulders, big boulders, massive boulders, the biggest boulders anyone has ever seen. Then they threw the boulders into the river where they would be carried downstream and broken into all the rocks, gravel, and sand in the world. There was one giant, smaller than all the others, who had never managed to grow a big boulder. Their name was Rocket, and their boulders turned out different. The big giants didn't mind. A rock is a rock, they said. Throw it into the river, and it will break into gravel and sand, just like any other. But Rocket couldn't bear to part with any of their creations. While the other giants harvested their boulders, Rocket carried theirs high up the mountain. There, on the high slopes, Rocket had created quite a gallery. Rocket thought it made the cliffs look beautiful. From below, it looked a bit different. The big giants worried it was unsafe. Rocket, they said, you are one mountain goat sneezing away from an avalanche. Ah, come on, said Rocket. Then they heard it, a distant ba-choo. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Rocket couldn't bear to turn around. Slowly, they made their way to the base of the mountain. Do you need anything? Asked the other giants kindly. Just some time, said Rocket. Rocket stayed there late into the night. They sat in the sand and gravel that had been their works and looked at the sky. The stars swirled above them. Not even the stars are permanent, Rocket thought. A breeze blew past, and suddenly, Rocket felt better. And that's it. And that is also it for episode 153 of the Story Stream. Thank you so much for joining me today, Ford. Thank you for your company and for your ideas. I will be back on Friday, December 10th for episode 154. So until then, take care and be well. I'll see you soon.